sustainability and green energy, Viking heritage, welfare system, new Nordic food. Welcome to Denmark Explained, where we explore the rich tapestry of Danish culture, one captivating story at a time. The first time I stepped off the plane in Copenhagen, I was filled with excitement. Denmark, the land of hygge, social trust, and some of the happiest people on earth. What could go wrong? I had read countless articles reassuring me that almost every Dane speaks fluent English. It seemed like the perfect place for an English speaker to build a new life. But within weeks, the illusion began to crack. But before we continue, please support the channel by pressing the like button, share, and hit subscribe. Thank you. At first it was little things, the cashier at the supermarket greeting me in Danish, her face shifting ever so slightly when I hesitated before answering. The announcement on the train, explaining a delay, leaving me clueless while the Danes around me nodded in understanding. The unreadable letters in my mailbox, demanding some bureaucratic action I couldn't comprehend. I told myself it didn't matter. I had Google Translate. I had Danish colleagues who could help me when things got tricky. I didn't need to learn Danish. But slowly, I began to feel like an outsider in my own daily life. Social interactions were the worst. At work, my colleagues switched to English when I was around, but the moment I left the conversation, they snapped back into their mother tongue. At social gatherings, I found myself nodding along, pretending to understand, waiting for someone to translate the joke that had just made the whole room erupt in laughter. And then there was the job market. I had assumed my international experience and fluency in English would be enough. After all, Denmark is full of global companies, right? But every job posting seemed to include the dreaded phrase, fluent Danish required. Even when I applied for positions where Danish wasn't explicitly mentioned, I could sense the hesitation in recruiters' voices. It's not a deal breaker, they assured me, but it would definitely help. Without Danish, my world became small. I was restricted to international communities, foreigner-friendly workplaces, and social circles that, while welcoming, felt like a separate reality from Danish life. I watched other newcomers struggle too. Some clung to their English bubble, never quite integrating. Others threw themselves into Danish language courses, fighting their way through the difficult pronunciation and endless exceptions to the rules. Learning Danish is not for the faint of heart. The pronunciation alone is a minefield. Words seem to swallow themselves, consonants disappear, and vowels merge into sounds that don't exist in English. The word R is barely pronounced in many cases, and entire syllables vanish into thin air. Even if you think you're saying a word correctly, the reaction from a native speaker might tell you otherwise. Then, there's the grammar. While simpler than some languages, Danish still has its quirks. The infamous stad, gendered nouns, and irregular plural forms. For many foreigners, progress feels painstakingly slow. But perhaps the biggest challenge is motivation. Because Danes speak English so well, it's easy to slip into comfort. If you struggle in a conversation, the person you're speaking to will likely switch to English to make it easier for you. At first it feels like kindness, and it is, but over time, it becomes a barrier. How do you learn a language when you never need to use it? The social divide. It took me a long time to realize that speaking Danish isn't just about practical matters. It's about identity. Danes have a strong cultural bond to their language. It's more than just a means of communication. It's a symbol of belonging. While they are happy to speak English with you, true friendships often form in their native tongue. I began to notice it in social settings. I would have a great conversation with a Dane in English, but as soon as the group dynamic took over, the language shifted back to Danish. It wasn't intentional exclusion, just instinct. The flow of conversation is easier in one's mother tongue. Over time, this pattern became exhausting. I wasn't alone in this experience. Many foreigners who have lived in Denmark for years still feel like outsiders. They build communities with other internationals, socialize in expat circles, and navigate life in a parallel society. Some are content with this, but others struggle with a sense of isolation. One day, I stood in line at the pharmacy, struggling to explain what I needed. The pharmacist switched to English, but there was something about her tone, polite but distant. I realized I was just another foreigner passing through, not truly a part of this country. That night I made a decision. I could keep living on the edges of Danish society, always feeling like an outsider, or I could commit to learning the language. So, I signed up for a Danish course. I forced myself to use Danish in daily interactions, even when it felt uncomfortable. I made mistakes, stumbled over words, and endured countless awkward pauses. But slowly, something shifted. The first time I ordered a coffee entirely in Danish, the barista smiled in a way that felt different. When I asked for directions in Danish, the response was friendlier. And when I finally managed to follow an entire Danish conversation at work without anyone switching to English, I felt an overwhelming sense of accomplishment. Now, I won't pretend that learning Danish solved all my problems. It's still a difficult language, and even after months of study, I'm far from fluent. But the effort alone has made a difference. Danes appreciate when someone tries. Even if your Danish is imperfect, the fact that you're making an effort can change the way you are perceived. The job market also opened up. Being able to communicate in Danish, even at a basic level, showed potential employers that I was committed to integrating. It gave me access to professional networks I previously couldn't enter. Socially, I felt a shift as well. I started getting invited to more gatherings, and slowly, I was able to follow along in conversations. I still struggled at times, but the walls were coming down. So, if you're moving to Denmark, you have a choice to make. Will you accept life as a permanent outsider, always relying on the kindness of bilingual Danes? Or will you fight your way into the heart of the culture, one difficult Danish word at a time? We hope you enjoyed this video. Feel free to share your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. It really helps us bring you more amazing content. Join us here at Denmark Explained, where we uncover the wonders of Danish culture, one story at a time. See you in the next video.